Welcome back to Priesthood Dispatches After Dinner Chat. I'm Priesthood Dispatches. This is episode 4, and we have Brian Middleton with us live from Tennessee. Brian contributed to the blog. I forgot where we were there for a minute, Brian.
You're all good.
Relaxed. Brian contributed to the blog with his story, The Bear of Leeds, and me and Brian both served in the same mission at the same time, although not with one another. But The Bear of Leeds is a story of survival. It's a tragedy, but it's something that I think a lot of people have experienced, unfortunately, in the mission field. So as a trigger warning, before we begin Brian's story, I want to just put out there that we will cover topics of sexual abuse. For anyone affected by those topics, in the UK, there's the Survivors Trust, and in the United States, there is a charity called RAIN. The links to those charities who help survivors of sexual abuse can be found in the description of the show. If there is anyone from outside of those countries who feels that they need help, then please get in touch at War Office at priesthooddispatches.com, and we'll do our best to signpost you to where you can find that much needed help. Okay, but we'll get right into it. Brian Middleton, live from Tennessee. Brian, can you give us a quick bio of where you started in the Mormon world?
Yeah, so born into the Latter-day Saint faith. My father is a convert, and my mother was born and raised. Part of my mother's family were pioneers, and another part were later converts to the church from Germany.
Were they polygamous pioneers?
Some of the ones that were early converts were polygamous pioneers. The later German ones were not supposed to be polygamous, but there's a history of sexual abuse relating to that. And I'm pretty sure that's what's contributed to a lot of the familial trauma that my family is dealing with still to this day. But basically, it's not really talked about, but there's little hints here and there that I discovered about how my apparently my great grandfather, I'm not 100% certain of this, but it sounded like he was married to one sister and also having relations with another. So
wow,
yeah.
You're not the great grandchild of Joseph Smith, though.
No.
Okay.
Or Brigham Young. No. So I was born in Ohio, lived in Alabama until about the age of 5. Then my dad got a job out in California, Northern California, just outside Sacramento, with a major company. And so we relocated out to California, and from about the age of 5 until I left on my mission at the age of 19, February 2003, I believe. I lived in California, and then when I was called to the Leeds, England Leeds mission, and I went to the UK MTC, the Preston, England MTC, which was a fun experience.
Do you know they just had to take the Moroni down?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, it's been struck by lightning too many times. Like, you're just like, if there was one figurehead in the church that you'd think would be protected, it'd be every angel Moroni on the planet. But apparently they're just massive lightning conductors.
Well, yeah, if they're covered in gold, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
You're all good. I had my MTC companion was from South Africa, and he was unendowed, so I got to take him through the endowment session.
How did he enjoy that?
He was a little freaked out.
That's like a whole ton of pressure.
Yeah. And that was where I figured out that the true names are on a schedule.
Yeah. So
because, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so like, because you, so my dad was the same. He went into the MTC unendowed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, usually when you go for an endowment, you're surrounded by your tribe and everyone kind of looking at you and being like, it's true, carry on, you know, keep doing the weird thing. But he would have been there with total strangers, with you who obviously well-meaning, and going through something that he probably just thought was absolutely batshit, but there was no social reinforcement there in a good way. It was almost like social reinforcement in a really bad way, because there was no one to say, like, kindly, yeah, it's okay. It was more of a, look, you're here now, and if you don't do it, it's catastrophe. I don't know.
Yeah. So my MTC group was one of the largest that came into the mission. It was the largest at that point. And he melded beautifully with a lot of the other guys in the MTC group.
Okay.
And I didn't. And later I discovered I'm autistic. So that's probably a big part of it. It also didn't help that because being autistic, one of the things that is pretty common about us, and this is the autism neurotype, not the disability autism spectrum disorder. They're interrelated, but you cannot have ASD and not be autistic, but you can be autistic and not have ASD. That's a simplified version of it. But one of the common characteristics is we love rules, clearly defined rules. And so for me, growing up Mormon, it's like, oh my gosh, these rules are so clearly defined. So like I was intense, I was really intense. And, you know, I dove in deep and was very devout Peter priesthood. And that didn't endear me to my peers, even though I was trying to, you know, be friendly. And then of course, some of the other guys, a lot of the other guys were, you know, a little bit more apostate would be the term that was used at the time. But like, for example, how I figured it out was my companion, one of the other guys was like, what name did you get? And I was like, guys, don't do that. Like, and then my companion pulled out a Bible, because, you know, when we're sitting in the pews, they're right there and in front of him, and he looks up the name and points to it, and I see it out of the corner of my eye, and I'm like, wait, that's the same one I got. I thought he would have gotten something different. So
I had when I first went through, my brother-in-law was there with me, and he did exactly the same thing. He'd obviously been through before, and he said he pulled out the scriptures and he went through and he's like, pointed to a name. He's like, that's your name. And I was blown away. I was just like, oh my gosh, how did you hear that? And never even knew that it was all a con. But
it's all a schedule.
I'm just trying to pull it up now. The Lexicon, they call it. But yeah, it's and that's how they figure out. My state president said to me, oh, if I ever forget, then I can just go back to the church and tell them what date I went through the temple, and then someone will whisper it to me again. But here we go. I'll just share it on screen now. So you just pop your name in, and Bob's your uncle. There it is. Your name could be Bob. But yeah, all the names, and it's crazy because you think of this new name as being something amazing and so, like, I don't know, just spiritual. I've got my new name. It's just for me, and little did you know, it's for everyone, every man and his dog. So yeah, Ozzy Johnson, the Oracle, like something from the Matrix. Or that there's a new Matrix coming out. Not to it looks good, but looks better than this tripe. Anyway,
but going back to my childhood, so one of my earliest Mormon experiences I had was my family had a family home evening, which for those who are not familiar with that, that's usually on a Monday night where you meet together and you have a spiritual lesson. And sometimes there's games and fun things depending on how cool your parents are.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's, you know, spiritual lessons, that sort of thing. Well, we had a lesson about the Book of Mormon, and we reviewed the Moroni's Promise, where if you ask, then you'll receive, if you ask if it's true, that you'll receive an answer. And so 7-year-old me, loving my family, wanting very much to be connected to my family, and hearing all the promises of time and all eternity and all this other stuff. And if you're not faithful, then you can see them, but you're not going to be with them for all eternity type thing. Yeah. Being scared to death, goes into my room and prays and cries intensely for about 20 minutes and not getting anything, just getting nothing except this pit in my stomach. And I'm like, well, I can't go out there and not have had something. So terrified, I come out and I say that I had the Spirit come to me and tell me that the Book of Mormon was true, and I'm crying and shaking, and of course everybody else is reading that as me having an actual spiritual experience. But no, I straight up lied. Wow. I lied because I was scared to lose my family, because I love my family. And to this day, certain family members will tell me about that and be like, oh, you had this experience, why would you? And I'm like, because it's not true. Because I was scared, because my, to use behavior analytic terms, my day job is I'm a behavior analyst. I was scared of the punishment contingency that was present. So there was an abolishing operation for me to tell the truth.
Yeah.
And there was an establishing operation for me to lie. And by lying, I received reinforcement. And that reinforcement was social and attention and access. And so like, that's what happened. And, yes, I've had some amazing experiences, some truly fantastic experiences, but now my stance on it is, having spoken to a lot of people from multiple faiths and non-faiths. I've spoken to atheists who've had experiences like this, similar to what I've had, or even others. And some of them are spiritual gifts, like prophecy, like the gift of tongues, the all these sorts of things. And again, people across multiple cultures. And every single one of them tries to explain it within their worldview, within their cultural worldview.
Yeah.
And the only ones who've been truly honest that I've encountered are the atheists, who are like, I don't know it. Maybe it's a natural process. Maybe it's God. But because I can't know for sure, all I can know is I had this experience and that's it.
Yeah.
And so are there deity? Are there supreme being or beings?
Okay,
possibly?
Wait.
Wait.
Before you get there, because that's the question everyone wants the answer to. And I
Okay.
know you're going to give us a very good answer because we discussed this already.
All right.
But we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit there. So
okay.
We know
how about I?
you grew up in a Mormon household from some pioneer stock. You were baptized,
and some convert stock.
And some convert stock. So baptized at 8.
Yep.
And you followed pretty much the general kind of Peter priesthood, youth program, scout. Were you a scout, Eagle Scout?
I'm an Eagle Scout with 3 palms.
All that. and then went on a mission, served the England Leeds mission, and we'll come back to that. After your mission, did you go home, get married, or what happened?
So I met my ex while I was going to school in southern Utah. I attended a little traditional liberal arts college that's now defunct, called George Wythe University.
Okay.
And I met her there, and unusual courtship. We actually were dating for a year and engaged for a year before getting married. And there was no premarital sex.
None whatsoever.
None whatsoever. Like,
is that difficult?
I think this has something to do with being autistic, but because that particular part of me wasn't unlocked,
that's why I didn't make the assumption.
Yeah. So like I was aware of sexual attraction. I definitely had all the reactions, but that just had never brought two and two together until.
Do you think that was more difficult for her?
I honestly don't know.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Okay. Probably, maybe. But the long and short of it was like we definitely did everything we were supposed to.
Yeah.
And we got sealed in the temple, St. George Temple. We were married for 6 years. She asked for a divorce. And I suspect that when the relationship started going downhill, there might have been some infidelity, but I can't know for sure.
Okay.
And that was a fun, interesting experience, but
yeah. It's far too serious for an after dinner chat. So
okay,
we'll have to wait for your Mormon stories episode to explore that one. I think we need more than an hour on that one.
Yeah, but but that was my experience, and then so the thing that led me to leave. Is that okay for me to talk about that?
Yeah. So okay. We're up to the age of 30 now.
Approximately 30, yes.
So you've done 22 years on the front lines, being a diehard kind of fan of Joseph Smith and everything. You've been married, served the mission, married in the temple. Unfortunately, the marriage ends in a divorce. And at the age of 30, you have some kind of paradigm shift.
Yeah. So it was actually prior to my divorce that this paradigm shift happened. So I was in church, and I was going to church, and she wasn't consistently. She sometimes would go, but sometimes wouldn't. And I totally understand why now, because, oh my God, it's so judgy. But I was in church, and I have been talking to my priesthood leaders. I have been attending church regularly, and I was just in sacrament meeting, just suffering. Like, everything's going wrong. I don't know why. Why is everything going wrong? I've done everything I was supposed to do. I followed the counsel of my priesthood leaders. And I got a very clear impression, and that clear impression was go up on the mountainside. Now, I lived in Cedar City, Utah at the time, and like literally the mountain is right there, Cedar Mountain. It's beautiful. And so I'm like, all right, well, that's that. I'm following the impression that's led me to be there to help people and to do things both for myself and for others. That's a positive. And every time I've listened to that voice, that feeling, things have gone right. Yeah. And the one time I didn't listen to it, somebody passed away.
Okay.
So like, whatever that sense is, I trust it. And so I trusted it, and I went up on the mountainside. And while I was up on the mountainside hiking, so I first ran home, put on hiking boots and hiking clothes and all that. Yeah. While I was on the mountainside, I was walking up to this one area, and I saw this person standing on the edge of a cliff. And I just got this intense feeling, talk to him. And so I walked up to him, and I talked to him, and he looked like he was going to jump, and I just kind of talked him down, and then we walked down that trail together and just talked, and then he left. I've never seen him again. I have no clue what his name is. I was there, and I needed to be there. And I straight up looked at the sky and said, God, what the fuck? Why is it that I have more spiritual experiences on the side of a goddamn mountain, pun intended, and yet at church I'm suffering? And the answer that I got back was, you're good. You don't need to go back.
Wow.
And I'm like, wait, what? It's like, you're good. You don't need to go back. And I kept testing it over and over again for about 6 months, and just I consistently was getting the answer: you don't need to go. You're done. You've graduated. And so I followed that. And that's the interesting thing, is like a lot of people are like, well, you must have had something wrong in your life. You were doing something wrong. And I'm like, no, I literally had what you consider a personal revelation. I literally was told by the thing that you tell me is God talking to you that I'm done. I don't need to be here.
Yeah. And that's a problem for Mormonism, because you can throw at them fact, you can throw at them logic, plain history, and they will argue everything comes back to personal revelation, and that regardless of everything, they've had it personally revealed to them that it's true. We don't know everything about history and different things, but that it's true. Did you ever have anyone tell you that revelation was from Satan?
Oh, I've had a few people who've said, well, that obviously wasn't. I'm like, it's the exact same experience that I had when I was told to be there for someone else and help somebody else from committing suicide. It was the same experience that I had on my mission multiple times, where I was somewhere at the right place at the right time for someone to help somebody out.
Yeah, that's like it brings you around in a big circle, because if they say then that your personal experience was somehow falsified, fake, from Satan, then who's to say that it's not the other way around?
Yep.
The Mormon experience is what's falsified, or the Jehovah's Witness experience, or the Baptist, Scientologist,
or the yogic flying, or whatever the hell.
It's all just a melting pot of human experience. And I think from our conversations already, you have a good handle on that, as in your area of expertise that you've gone into in your life, in studying human behavior and interaction. For, I guess, for people watching, can you give us, it was something I read that you wrote earlier about the taste buds, the moral taste buds, and the burger joint.
So that's basically an excerpt from a chapter that I'm working on writing called Drawing Connections, which is drawing connections between multiple theories across multiple disciplines. The discipline I'm in is radical behaviorism. That comes from the tradition of B.F. Skinner, pigeons playing ping pong, that sort of thing. Most people don't realize that Skinnerian behaviorism, or radical behaviorism, is more than just that. There's verbal behavior, and basically the idea is drawing the connections between radical behaviorism and a newer theory called relational frame theory, to connections of other theories from social psychology and evolutionary biology. The other theories being moral foundations theory, moral disengagement theory, Stephen Hassan's bite model for cults, and memetics from evolutionary biology. Richard Dawkins, in his The Selfish Gene, mentions memes as a basically the gene type for ideas, and since then it's developed into its own area of study, and it's really fascinating. But the long story short is, when you connect all these ideas together, you start seeing a beautiful framework for how to perceive the world. And so using moral foundations theory as kind of the backbone for this, Jonathan Haidt, it's spelled Haidt, but he pronounces it Haidt, the principal researcher behind this, he proposes that there are 6 moral taste buds. When he originally proposed, it was 5, but he's since discovered a 6th one. And there's some amazing research that's been done across the world. So it's not just the Western world, it's all the way around the world that they're doing research, and it's still ongoing, to identify moral foundations. And basically every person has a moral foundation that's a concentration of each of these 6 components. And this idea occurred to me today, which is what led to me writing that excerpt, of looking at political parties as being like burger joints or, another fast food place. Basically, the idea behind a burger joint is that you want to appeal to a broad audience of taste buds, but you have a specific flavor profile. And just because that flavor profile is preferred by some people doesn't mean it's the perfect burger for everyone, but it's just broad enough to capture enough people that they want to come back. So it's not about perfectly satisfying the desires of the person who's eating. It's about satisfying people just enough to keep them coming back. And if you can make your perfect burger, it's going to be unique to you. Well, same thing goes with political parties. Same thing goes with any organization. You want to get people coming back. But the problem with this is because it's not customized to you and your tastes, when you're looking at group behavior, that if you get used to constantly eating one type of food that's kind of sort of satisfying you, but not hitting all of your moral foundations, which values are informed off of moral foundations. So, but if you're kind of hitting those taste buds, but it's not quite clicking, eventually what happens is if you don't use it, you lose it, and you kind of numb yourself to that desire. And then, of course, when you have you're in a group and you've got contingencies of reinforcement and punishment, and you've got establishing and abolishing operations, and you've got behavior momentum, which is all these things working together to keep you where you're at. Then what happens is you kind of lose your foundation, or your foundation can erode. And that's where Steve Hassan's bite model comes in, and moral disengagement theory comes in. Of if you're in this group of people and you're all getting all these messages, and you're being told that, oh, well, this doesn't quite fit, so that's not allowed, then you start creating internal contingencies where you negative self-talk against the ideas that were yours, and positive self-talk to reinforce the group contingency. And anything that doesn't jive with this is pushed to the side, and that's where the moral disengagement comes in.
I think the thing you were saying as well. So through all of this, you have this almost like you were saying, the burger, and you get that used to this bland kind of burger for everyone. That when you finally leave, you start to discover what your actual makeup is. And when you've been in, say, a religion for so long, you've never actually discovered yourself. And I think a lot of people, when they leave Mormonism or other religions that are quite right-wing in their socialism, etc., I think when they leave, they become more liberal, and people are like, oh, you're becoming a woke liberal. And I don't think that's it at all. I think it's the fact that there's no longer this prescribed kind of homophobia, racism, or patriarchy, and people actually start to understand what they actually feel inside about other people. And I can see it in myself and other people. The longer you are outside of that box, you allow yourself to learn, whether it's about you or the world. So I don't think it's becoming more liberal. I'd say in some cases I may have become more conservative or whatever it might be, but I've become more me.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah. I thought it was really interesting. Again, I know people are probably thinking, Priests and Dispatchers, man, that's really heavy. But when you unpack it like a burger, I think it's amazing. That's why I asked the question. But we're going to comment for you from Danelle Allen. I believe you, Brian. I was also keeping the commandments and left when I received personal revelation. Thank you for sharing your story. Thanks for the message, Danelle. And I think...
Thank you.
I didn't have an experience like that, but I think it's amazing that you and other people have, because I'd love to be able to turn around to people and be like, well, I received revelation that it's not true, or however that was. And I saw that you did it a few times on Facebook recently, when I shared the story, The Bear of Leeds. So we'll head in that direction now. So we're going to rewind from you leaving the church circa age 30. We're going to go back to the mission field. So you've left home, which at the time was where?
Northern California, so El Dorado County. It was the El Dorado ward.
Okay, so Leeds must have been a bit of a culture shock for you then.
Not too much of one, because half my family are Southern Baptists and half my family are Mormon.
Okay.
So like for me, it was like, it was a new culture, but at the same time, it wasn't a new culture. It was like, oh, okay, this is cool. And my first transfer area was actually Gateshead, which is northeast England, just south of Newcastle.
No, I didn't even know that. I served in Gateshead too. Was that before or after me? Do you know?
It was after you. And I had a Romanian trainer and a German follow-up trainer, and I will say,
who was your trainer? Sorry, guys. Anyone watching this, I'm geeking out now because
Mario Stefan.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And it was sorry, Matthias Mekas, who was my follow-up trainer. And oh man, I love Matthias so much. He's the best. He's an amazing person. We had such good experiences. In fact, it war stories. Okay, so
go on.
So there's this inactive person that we were consistently visiting, me and Stefan, and he kept on, like, having us over, but then kind of blowing us off. But when I introduced him to Matthias, he was like, oh, well, come over, let's have tea. And we go over there and we're enjoying, eating dinner, which, for those who aren't familiar, in England, tea is dinner, basically. We were just sitting around the table, and he started talking about history. And Matthias and I are both history people. And so we started chatting with him. He's like, oh, well, let me show you my collection of historical artifacts. And he starts pulling out Nazi materials.
Wow.
Like we're talking like original prints and a few reprints. And I still have some stamps that he gave us. So I've got some Adolf Hitler stamps and a bunch of other stuff. And he started talking about, the reason he went inactive was because the blacks got the priesthood. And we had to, we kept such a straight face. And the funny story is that Matthias, both of his grandparents were actually anti-Nazi.
Wow.
So like he has a very interesting history there. And so when we got back, he got back from the dinner appointment. He told me his whole story and about his grandparents and all that cool stuff. And we had kind of a bonding moment there, but it was like, where did this come from?
Wow. You know what though? Rewind 60 years and the church was all into that stuff, They were just going to go with whoever won. They were hedging their bets, and that's crazy. I think, my overriding memory of you as a missionary, and we really didn't move in the same circles. Like, I think we were there at the same time, but was a story. I got a phone call from another elder who was part of the mission grapevine. And apparently this mission grapevine had 3 points on it. There was this elder, another elder who was known as a bit of a rule breaker, and me, apparently. But I was like super like rule keeping. I said to someone, how was I even part of that? And they were like, well, you were the end of it. I was like, what do you mean? And they were like, well, they feed it all to you and then you tell everyone. And I'm like, I tell the people around me, and they're like, that's how gossip works. But there was a famous story, and I think it goes down in mission history, of a certain elder that ended up in hospital, and a certain elder's companion who ended up in a different sort of bed, but wasn't a hospital bed or his own bed. Do you want to tell us the story?
Yeah. So I'll keep it simple. I had appendicitis, and so I went into hospital, and they managed to pull it out, but then I was in the hospital for an additional week because I caught the superbug, and that resulted in all sorts of misery. And when I first went in, my companion had called the district leader, and they came down and got him right away. And basically, he was in a trio or threesome while I was recouping at one of the elderly missionary couples in Leeds mission home. This all took place in Keighley, which is just north of Halifax, and just outside of Bradford. And so I, basically was held up for a couple weeks. And then, of course, I get the slap on the butt. All right, back out in the mission field. And, of course, I didn't have a proper opportunity to recover because I had a 3-inch incision in my gut.
Wow.
Right? Like cutting through the stomach wall. And so, I wasn't getting the right nutrition because I wasn't told what I was supposed to be eating. I was just handed some pills and sent on my way.
Given a blessing, right?
What's that?
Given a blessing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the hospital sent me the pills, but then, yeah, I did get a blessing. But then I was sent back to the area I was serving in Keighley. And because of that level of injury, it was really, really difficult to track, to do all the things we were supposed to do. And, I felt guilty about it. And the mission president and the zone leaders, or zone lords, as I like to call them, told me, well, just do the best you can and, rest up. And because we were friends with this one lady in the ward, and she was pretty good at bringing people to us to talk to, we started spending a lot of time at her house, and she would bring people to us, and we teach lessons and do all this other stuff. And then we just kind of chill out. And so 3 to 4 weeks later, I have complications due to the not having the right nutrition and not having the right things being done, because, hey, let's take a major surgery and treat it like it's nothing. I should have probably been sent home for medical, but hey, let's be efficient here. So I end up back in the hospital thinking I'm having another appendicitis issue but it's gone. I don't have an appendix. Turns out it was severe constipation, and I was in the hospital for another week. Well, my companion, after this, he hopped in the car and he drove up to this lady's place, and the rest is history. They had relations. And the onlyest reason why the mission president found out about this was because he confessed.
Yeah. So the story I heard was slightly different. I'm not saying yours is wrong. I'm just saying it's interesting how, even though you lived it in real time and I only lived it maybe a couple of weeks after, but the story had changed already. The story was that you'd broken your leg, and you were in hospital with a broken leg. The story would have been so much better if you'd have been in hospital because you were like full of shit. You know what I mean? I don't know why that didn't make it in, but you'd broken your leg. And as we imagined it as missionaries with beer goggles on, this lovely nurse waltzed in, you and your companion there, and she said, visiting time's over. And your companion was like, woo! He gets in the car and he razzes around to this less active sister's house, and they boink all night. but the less active sister was like in her 50s, which I think is a bit of an exaggeration.
I think she was in her early 40s.
Did she have children the same age as you?
Yes.
Okay, so that's
yes.
a good indication. But that she fell pregnant, and it was that caused the elder to confess.
That part is true. But then she later miscarried.
Yeah.
So,
but they did get married. The elder went home and then came right back on his missionary visa and got married, and they lived happily for a long time. I'm sure. I know they moved between Keithley and somewhere in the States, and back again,
Arizona.
But yeah, that was like one of the most famous stories of the England Leeds mission circa the early noughties or mid noughties. Was this elder? Not so much you; it was more the other guy.
Yeah.
But I think you had a big role to play. Don't feel guilty about it, but you had a big role to play in it, in freeing him up for the free throw.
The mission president played on that guilt thing and didn't really straight up say it, but did imply that if I had been more faithful, my companion wouldn't have fallen into sin. And I was transferred to an area where I was punished. I was sent to the armpit of the mission.
Middleton.
Yes, yeah. Which, by the way, was one of my favorite areas because it wasn't an armpit. It was a beautiful place and amazing people.
But you're away from everyone. That's what it was. Bridlington is on the east coast of the UK,
just below Scarborough.
Yeah, there's a line of like small seaside towns, and Bridlington's one of them. But outside of that, there's nothing for like 10, 15 miles in any direction other than these tiny little seaside towns. So there's no big city. There's no, big membership or anything like that. It's just a small, is it a branch there?
It's a branch in Bridlington and a ward in Scarborough.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So you were like cast out. I remember you being there.
Yeah.
You were there for a long time as well, weren't you?
I was in Bridlington for 7.5 months and in Scarborough for 3.
Oh my gosh, so almost half your mission.
Yeah. And it was the best thing that could have happened to me. And actually one of the seminal things that happened on my mission actually happened in Bridlington. I don't know if you recall the Woodward revelation to go street contacting during the hottest summer in full sacrifice week. Yes, we were supposed to go out and we were supposed to wear jackets in a high humidity and high heat.
Yeah,
and him telling us, well, I can do it, so you can. And despite the fact he spent most of his time in either an air-conditioned office or car, but hey, whatever. So we're out there doing our street contacting. The zone leaders come up and we're doing splits. One of the zone leaders was David Ellis, Australian, and the other was Swiss missionary whose name I don't want to remember because he was a horrible asshole. But yeah, there you go. And so we were street contacting, and I'm there street contacting. At the time it was one cell phone for a missionary companionship. It was one of those old Nokia bricks, and my companion had the Nokia brick. And I'm doing the street contacting. I walk up to this guy and say, you want to hear a message from for Jesus Christ? And this guy looks me in the eye and says, I'd love to listen to this message, but I haven't eaten in 3 days. I'm really hungry. And I go, well, there's a Sainsbury's over there. Let's go get you some food. And he's like, wait, what? I'm like, let's go get you some food. So we go into the Sainsbury's, and he's getting the bare minimum. I'm like, no. And I get him if he needs. I make sure to put it in in his basket. And I'll tell you right now that was one of the most important lessons that Elder Stefan taught me. And I didn't like him as a person, but I did like that he was willing to sacrifice and help others. And he taught me a very important lesson there. So, I was willing to do that. And I bought this guy food, and we later had an appointment. He's like, I'm like, don't do this because I helped you. Do this because you want to. Mm-hmm. Later on, it didn't turn into anything, but, we did meet with him. Well, I come out of the Sainsbury with this guy, and all three missionaries are panicking, looking for me. And I was only in there for about 10 minutes, but they're like, where were you? And I was like, well, I was helping this guy out. I bought him some food. He was hungry. So what happened was, after this, they called the assistants to the president, and the Swiss missionary wanted to punish me, and the mission president was saying that he would too. And David stood up to the mission president and said, and I'm pretty sure he said this exactly this way too, if you fucking punish Middleton, then I'm leaving right now. And so as punishment, I got to kill him off. I got to send him home. I was with him for his last transfer. So he was demoted, and it was the best transfer I ever had. I loved hanging out with David. It was so much fun. I was
he went to bat for you. He got demoted and everything.
Yeah.
But isn't it telling how stupid like the whole regimented rule thing is, that you were being punished because you were out of sight for 10 minutes. You told them a very believable, true story of
it was verifiable. They could look at my transactions on the mission card.
I was buying that homeless person food for 10 minutes, but that required punishment because you could have been, I don't know, masturbating for 10 minutes. You could have been with a woman doing all these other things, but we have to be in sight of one another because we can't be trusted to keep the rules or do something nice like you did. It's a joke, man.
But, it wasn't all bad. There were definitely a lot of really wonderful experiences.
Well, we're going to come to a bad one.
Wonderful people. Okay.
Okay, because it's come to that time. We call you the Bear of Leeds. Now, I've had many different conversations with people following publishing your story, The Bear of Leeds. Many people who found it shocking. Some people found it reaffirming and shared their stories with me of things that happened on their missions or things that they'd heard about. One person even said, has there always been a Bear of Leeds? Is it just a title that's passed on? And I think whether we know that or not, I think there could have been a lot of bears around the world from what I've been hearing. But again, as a trigger warning, the story of the Bear of Leeds involves sexual abuse, which has been, I guess, brushed off over the years in many guises as hazing or locker room fun, but in reality is very serious. For anyone who requires help, just signpost there again to the Survivors Trust in the UK, or RAINN, RAINN in the United States. You can see the links in the show description. But Brian, if you could tell us the story of how you became the Bear of Leeds.
So it was my last transfer, and it was the beginning of my last transfer. So transfers, for those who aren't aware of it, 6 weeks. Every 6 weeks, you can be relocated to a new location. And I knew it was my last transfer. The mission president wanted to get rid of our transfer group because there were a lot of us troublemakers in it. A lot. We were the burr in his saddle, as it were. And so he sent us a transfer home early with the convenient lie of, well, your visa's expired and it would cost the mission more to renew your visas. Once I got my passport back, oh, he was a goddamn liar. He was such a liar.
Aren't they 5-year visas?
Yeah, like it didn't expire, but that was the excuse that was given. So, just want to get rid of us, whatever. But frankly, it probably was for the best. So doing district splits again, this time with the zone leaders. This time I went to the zone leader's place, and one of the zone leaders went to my area. And the apartment or flat that the zone leaders were in had 6 missionaries in it. So 3 pairs. And I was with the junior zone leader, and the senior zone leader was back in my area.
What area was this?
Leeds 3rd, I think. Okay. So, yeah. I was with Elder Dietrich was my last companion. I keep on forgetting his first name. Kind of lost contact with him. But anyways, so I go into this apartment after we do our day of working, and there's a couple of my friends there. Because I know them, they're younger missionaries, and whenever we did hanging out on P days, preparation days on Mondays, we play football and hang out and talk together and talk about things we had in common. And so I clicked with them, and they pulled me aside and they said, "Hey, just so you know, those 3 other guys are going to come in, and one of them's going to be wearing briefs, really tight underwear, and he's going to hump you. He's going to dry hump you. And if you fight, they're going to hold you down. So just don't resist. Just let it happen, and it'll be done, and it'll never happen again. Everybody who comes here, that happens to. That happened to us." And I'm somewhat ashamed of this, but at the same time, I wasn't educated about this at the time. But I was like, "What the hell's wrong with you guys? Why would you let that happen? Why didn't you fight back? Why didn't you tell somebody?" And they're just like, just do it. Just let it happen. And now looking back, that is, and knowing what I know about trauma and sexual assault and those sorts of things, this is very common. And my response was very uncommon. I think it has to do with my neurotype. But when those assholes came in, I fought. And we're talking, like, I'm a big guy, but I was still had my young frame, so I wasn't as big as I am now. Definitely have always been pretty broad-shouldered, but these other guys were also big guys. Like, they were not small people, and they were definitely muscular. And yet I was so enraged that had both arms being held back, and I just and I kind of bashed the 2 together and pushed one over a bed and pushed the other against the wall. And the guy who was trying to hump me, I grabbed him and started just wailing on him and said, "Leave her the fuck alone," over and over again, and just kept on fighting them off until they finally "Whoa, what the hell? What the fuck, Middleton? Leave it. Come on, we're just trying to have fun." I'm like, no, this isn't fun. This is not okay. So if you touch me again at all, I'm calling the mission president. I'm calling the area president. I'm going all the way up to the goddamn prophet. If you touch me again, stay off me. And they backed off. And I wish I had said something. It wasn't until years and years later that I realized that was sexual assault.
Yeah.
And interestingly, after that happened, I felt guilty. I felt shame. I was like, what did I do wrong? What did I do to deserve this happening to me? I also felt guilty about being so angry. I felt awful for it because I'm like, well, that's not a godly emotion. That's not something I should be feeling.
Yeah. And I think having been in the mission at the same time, like you couldn't have said anything to the mission president because he was an enabler of that sort of behavior.
I've had a few people reach out to me and share me with privately, so I will not reveal information. But the previous mission president and this mission president, similar concerns were brought to him, both of them, and they were told that it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah,
that they were making a big deal out of it. So,
yeah, Ozzy's just got a couple of questions in the comments. He says, I'll just bring it up. Was it the same missionary doing it all the time, or was it just an area tradition, so different ones?
It sounded like it was the same missionary, but I didn't really inquire about it. It might have been a tradition. I honestly don't know enough to know.
Now, I know we're not going to name people here because we don't want to get into that messiness with them. You know, it's a horrible thing that they did. And as much as I think name shame and do whatever, that's not, they've got to deal with their own.
Yeah, I agree.
But I was companions earlier in his mission with the elder who did that. And honestly, he's just a fucking clown. And I'm not saying that is anything. What I'm saying is, like, I wouldn't be surprised if it was some sort of tradition in answer to Ozzy's thing, and that this guy is just like, yeah, I'll go with that. You know, I'll do that because it'll make me feel bigger and better. And Elder Middleton, you know, you'd been out in Bridlington for so long, you'd been isolated, you were seen maybe as lower in the social standing in the mission, and that he thought, well, I'm going to dominate that guy. But then, like your friends said, that it had happened to them.
Yeah.
Earlier in my mission, I'd repeated abuses from my trainer, who was then AP for about 18 months. And yeah, I think it's what happens when you take a bunch of undeveloped, not poorly educated, but not fully educated young men, some who've grown up as the alpha male, some who've grown up as, you know, the whipping boy, and you put them in a situation where the only rule is their rule. It's almost like a Lord of the Flies situation.
Well, it's the Stanford Experiment.
Yeah, but the problem is, you know, the church has just paid out $250 million because of priesthood leaders abusing scouts. You know, other churches are paying out millions for priests doing things to children. But when are we going to get to the point where just because we were over 18 doesn't mean that it wasn't wrong or that it didn't count, if you know what I mean? Because we could have been just as helpless in that situation, whether it had been physically helpless because, as you said, there were more of them and you fought back, whether it had been socially helpless because no matter how you fought, no one believed you, or everyone just kind of brushed it off as good old college fun. But I think surely there needs to be at some point a reckoning where the church understands, or I don't know if we've got to get together and make them understand. I don't know what that looks like or how we do that.
There's a lot of policy and things that are phrased as revelation, but our policy that the church does, and I'm never going back. I'm not, but I would love it if the faith that I was brought up in would acknowledge the problems that they're having, actually just own them, and then change. Because there are so many good people. I love so many people who have that faith and believe that's a part of who they are. And I reposted the story, and I had some people pop on and say some things, and I've had some other people reach out to me since and be like, you should have just let loose on those people. And I'm like, but why? Like that's the thing that I keep coming back to over and over again. It's like, yes, I've been using quite a bit of cursing, and because there's still that anger there, and that's a part of who I am. Like, and now I know that was what helped me survive. And I have been phrasing things as they are, but really what it is they were operating within their context.
Yeah.
And so, like, while I have been a victim, also aren't they victims in their own way? Because environment informs behavior. That's the core of my science as a radical behaviorist. Your environment informs your behavior, and that environment was so toxic.
And I agree with you, but I don't think it is your role as the victim to sympathize for them. I think you have to. That's for some greater good person to pick apart how they abused you, and that in doing, I totally agree, see what you're saying, but I think that kind of for the brass tacks of your experience there, that you were the victim, none of it was okay, and that it's the church who created that environment of the locker room. And that's what a mission is. It's the boys' locker room, just around the world. You know, you get together when 4 or 6 missionaries get together in apartments at night. Stupid stuff happens.
It's not even 4 or 6; it's 2.
Well,
when there's 2 and there's a power dynamic where one is in control and the other has to follow through. And let me be clear here. I'm not justifying their behavior. I never justify their behavior. You know what? I've made bad decisions, and I've done things that I feel guilty and shame for, and I should. The mistakes that I've made, and I could say, well, it was the environment, and it was this and this and that, all these other things. No, I own my mistakes. That's the thing. This is the thing that makes the change happen. We have to own our mistakes and then move forward. And I mean that literally, move forward, not forgiveness. I think forgiveness is the stupidest idea out there, because then somebody holds something over you. It's like, no, I don't have to be held. This doesn't have to be held over my head. It's own it, move forward.
Yeah.
That's my thing. And so it needs to be owned, and we need to move forward. And I can have compassion for them. And that's for me. That's my choice. I'm not saying anybody else should feel what I feel. This is my evolution, my process that I've gone through. And so that's why I say what I say. But I have compassion for them, and I feel so awful that that's the condition that still is happening to this day.
Yeah.
It's horrendous. But the only way that it's going to change is by bringing a light to the darkness and shining it in and being like, no, this is bullshit. It's happening. No, you can't say that, oh, well, boys will be boys. Or you can't say, well, you know, the church is perfect, but the people aren't. And all these other justifications. No, like, the systems inform behavior. If you want to change behavior, you change the systems. And right now, the system, there's good things about it, and there are horrendous things about it. And I like to say that this is the only time that I've had a situation where someone had unrighteous dominion over me. But this is one among many. It's just the one that was the most scarring, or could have been scarring, because the way I look at it is, this is an experience that I experienced, and I am better for it. Not because I had to experience it. I don't believe this whole story about God only gives you things that you can handle. I think that this is how life goes. Things happen, and you can either hold on to it and let it fester and rot you on from the inside out, or you can say, you know what? I experienced this. And that's actually a principle from acceptance and commitment therapy, which is one of the podcasts I have, Act Natural podcast, is about that. This is something called self as context. I'm seeing myself in context. And in context, I've experienced this. And just like self as context, I am autistic. But it's really not I'm autistic. I experience autism. And self as context is I am non-binary. But really, it's not I'm non-binary. I am a person who experiences the belief that it doesn't matter whether I'm male or female. What matters is that I'm me. And so I reject and this is partially in, and I fully acknowledge this is partially in rebellion against the church, but it's partially also to demonstrate this idea and live it. But I reject the idea that male or female is superior. I don't think that the priesthood, if there is something that is the priesthood, should go to any one sex over another or gender or whatever you want to call it. And so part of the reason why I say I'm non-binary and why I believe as I believe and act as I act is to demonstrate and model that's it. And if anybody's worried about pronouns, I don't care. That's literally, I don't care about my pronouns. Like I've had clients accidentally call me Miss Bryan or Mrs. Middleton or stuff like that. I'm like, I just don't care. It doesn't matter to me because really at the end of the day, what my pronoun is me. It's just kind of hard to say me likes burgers, you know? So it's just like, whatever. I'm
the bear.
Yeah, there you go. The bear.
The bear.
Which, to bring it full circle, that the Bear of Leeds was what I was nicknamed for that last transfer, and it made it back to me. And I think that they were trying to punish me, and at the time it hurt. I didn't quite catch the reference to the homosexual community at the time, but later I learned about what a bear is, and so they were trying to talk down to me and make it act like I was somehow inferior for this. But you know what? I hold that with pride because I know some bears and they're wonderful people. They're wonderful people, and I am so proud to be called the Bear of Leeds. No, so if you're going to be a Bear of Leeds.
No, absolutely. And I think like Priesthood Dispatches is all about telling humorous stories. And when you first sent me your story a few weeks ago, I didn't know what to do with it, in all honesty. You know, I've never handled anything like that before, but it touched me as well, from my experiences as a missionary. Which were very similar. So I knew we had to do something with it. I hope that we've put it out there. And Ozzy just put this up: who will become the Sam Young of missionary abuse? I don't know what to do with that, Ozzy, because on one hand, I think we'd all say we all want it to stop. But the great thing about Sam was he was a father protecting his children. It's a little bit harder sometimes to protect yourself, and to stand up and say, you know, I was abused and that these things happened to me. So I don't know, Ozzy, but we'll see. Hopefully one day we can make something happen. But sorry, we've gone to our place.
This is heavy, and that's okay.
You know what? I don't think there is any need for any more stories or jokes or anything. I think we've come to a point where we want this emotion to remain in its, I guess, purest form. And all I'll say is, for anyone, again, who's struggling, who may have been triggered or upset by what we've discussed in the last 20 minutes, in the UK, the Survivors Trust; in the United States, RAINN, RAINN. The links are in the description for the show. And anyone else around the world who needs help, email waroffice@priesthooddispatches.com. Anyone else with an experience that they want to share or add to this, email waroffice@priesthooddispatches.com. And Ozzy, you never know, we might get something together and try and have our own Sam Young moment with the Bear of Leeds. But I think that's where we're going to leave it for this evening. Thank you, Brian. Thanks, everyone in the comments. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.